Today is day 6 of this March 2026 7-day session. And I'm going to turn today to our old friend, Joko Beck, and her first book, Everyday Zen. An old chestnut. I'm going to start with a section entitled No Hope. It goes like this. A few days ago, I was informed of the suicide of a friend of mine, a man I hadn't seen for a dozen years. Even then, suicide was all he could talk about, so I wasn't surprised at the news. It's not that I think dying is a tragedy. We all die. That's not the tragedy. Maybe nothing is a tragedy, but I think we can say that to live without appreciating this life is at least a shame. Yeah, appreciating this life. It's really what practice is about. This life. It's one that we want to change. She says it's a precious opportunity we have to be alive as human beings. It's been said that the chance of having a human life is something like being picked up as one grain of sand out of all the grains on the beach. Such a rare chance, and yet somehow, as in the case of my friend, some error arises. Some of that error is present in each of us, not fully appreciating what we have in just being alive. So today, what I want to talk about is having no hope. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? Actually, it's not terrible at all. A life lived with no hope is a peaceful, joyous, compassionate life. As long as we identify with this mind and body, and we all do, we hope for things that we think will take care of them. We hope for success. We hope for health. We hope for enlightenment. We have all sorts of things we hope for. All hope, of course, is about sizing up the past and projecting it into the future. Hope is about how we want our life to change. We want things to be different. We want to be there. We don't want to be here. Really, hope and fear are two sides of one coin. According to Pema Chodron, there's actually a Tibetan word that combines the two called ridak. It's this continual dissatisfaction with how it is. And of course, the only thing we can have is how it is. Get to see this play out in sesshin again and again and again. She says, anyone who sits for any length of time sees that there is no past and no future except in our mind. There's nothing but self, and self is always here, present. It's not hidden. We're racing around like mad, trying to find something called self, this wonderful hidden self. Where is it hidden? We hope for something that's going to take care of this little self because we don't realize that already we are self. There's nothing around us that is not self? What are we looking for? It's right under our nose, what we're looking for. Really, what we're looking for in practice is a way back to what we are, and to where we are, to how we are. Looking to be completely embedded in our own lives. That wonderful life that we want to get can only come by opening up completely to the one that we have, which is the only one that's real. Then maybe in the future we will become Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. We have to be here now with the way things are. She says, a student recently loaned me a book on a text by Dogen Zenji called Tenzo Kyokun. It is Dogen Zenji's writings on his ideas of what a tenzo, that is a head cook, should be, the qualities of a tenzo, the life of a tenzo. From Dogen Zenji's point of view, the tenzo should be one of the most mature and meticulous students in the monastery. If his practice is not what a tenzo's practice should be, then from Dogen Zenji's viewpoint, the life of the entire monastery suffers. But obviously, Dogen Zenji, in describing these qualities of a tenzo and the directions for how a tenzo should do his work, is not just talking about the tenzo. He's talking about the life of any Zen student, any bodhisattva. And so it's very instructive and pertinent reading. So what do we find as he describes this life of an enlightened tenzo? Some mystic vision, some rapturous state? Not at all. There are many paragraphs on how to clean the sand out of the rice or the rice out of the sand. Very, very detailed. There's nothing in the management of the kitchen that Dogen Zenji left out. He writes about where to put the ladles, how to hang the ladles, and so on. Let me read you one paragraph. Now he's quoting Dogen. Next, you should not carelessly throw away the water that remains after washing the rice. In olden times, a cloth bag was used to filter out the water when it was thrown away. When you have finished washing the rice, put it into the cooking pot. Take special care lest a mouse accidentally falls into it. Under no circumstances should anyone who happens to be drifting through the kitchen to poke his fingers around or look into the pot. What is Dogen Zenji telling us? He didn't write this just for the tenzo. What can we all learn? In this writing, Dogen Zenji repeats a famous story. If we understand this one story, we really understand what Zen practice is. Young Dogen Zenji went to China to visit monasteries for practice and study, and one day at one of them on a very hot June afternoon, he saw the elderly tenzo working hard outside the kitchen. He was spreading out mushrooms to dry on a straw mat. And then he quotes directly from Dogen. She does. He carried a bamboo stick, but had no hat on his head. The sun's rays beat down so harshly that the tiles along the walk burned one's feet. He worked hard and was covered with sweat. I could not help but feel the work was too much of a strain for him. His back was a bow drawn taut. His long eyebrows were crane white. I approached and asked his age. He replied that he was 68 years old. Then I went on to ask him why he never used any assistance. He answered, "Other people are not me." "You are right," I said. I can see that your work is the activity of the Buddha Dharma. But why are you working so hard in this scorching sun? He replied, if I do not do it now, when else can I do it? There was nothing else for me to say. As I walked on along that passageway, I began to sense inwardly the true significance of the role of Tenzo. And then Joko says, the elderly Tenzo said, other people are not me. And let's look at this statement. What he is saying is, my life is absolute. No one can live it for me. No one can feel it for me. No one can serve it for me. My work, my suffering, my joy, they're absolute. There's no way, for instance, you can feel the pain in my toe, or I can feel the pain in yours. No way. You can't swallow for me. You can't sleep for me. And that is the paradox. In totally owning the pain, the joy, the responsibility of my life, if I see this point clearly, then I'm free. I have no hope. I have no need for anything else. It's one life that's given to us. Each of us. This opportunity, this amazing opportunity to be who we are. Not to veer off, not to wander away, not to look ahead or look back. Just again and again we get this opportunity. It's never taken away. In the middle of the most ridiculous complaining, belly aching, avoiding, there it is. Can't pin it down. You can't put it in a box. Can't make it into a thing. You need to step into it directly. She says, but we are usually living in vain hope for something or someone that will make my life easier and more pleasant. We spend most of our time trying to set life up in a way so that will be true, when contrariwise, the joy of our life is just in totally doing and just bearing what must be borne, in just doing what has to be done. It's not even what has to be done. It's there to be done, so we do it. We get up and make the donuts, whatever it is. Remember early in my practice when I realized that anything I did could be wonderful. It's probably why I went into construction. It's just to climb up on a ladder and scrape a house. It's just wonderful. But that's true for anything. It doesn't matter whether it's physical or just going into the office and typing a memo. I'm a bad person. Dogen Zenji speaks of the self settling naturally on the self. What does he mean by that? He means that only you can experience your own pain and your own joy. If there's one impression that comes into your life that is not received, then that's in that second you die a little bit. Or we could say you're not living a little bit. None of us completely lives like that, but at least we don't need to lose 90% of the experience of our life. I wonder if that's an exaggeration or an underestimate. So much goes by that we just don't catch. I had a friend who told me about driving to Florida, and he was in Ohio, and then he came to and he was in Tennessee. Didn't even know what he had been thinking or doing, just sort of a tooling along on automatic pilot. She quotes the Tenzo, "If I do not do it now, when else can I do it?" She says, "Only I can take care of the self from morning to night. Only I can receive life." And it's this contact, second by second by second, which Dogen Zenji is talking about as he describes the day of the Tenzo. Take care of this, take care of that, and that. Not just washing the rice, but doing it carefully, grain by grain. Not just throwing the water out. Each bite we take of our food, each word I say, each word you say, each encounter, each second, that's it. Not chanting with your mind somewhere else. Not half doing the dishes. Not half doing anything. She says, "I can remember when I used to daydream literally 4 or 5 hours at a time. And now, sadly, I see so many people dreaming their lives away. Sometimes a man or a woman dreams of an ideal partner. They dream and they dream. But when we live life in dreams and hopes, then what life can offer, what that man or woman sitting right next to us, ordinary, unglamorous, the wonder of that life escapes us because we are hoping for something special or some ideal." And what Dogen Zenji is telling us is that real practice has nothing to do with that. It always comes to mind the image of talking to someone at a gathering or a party and looking over their shoulder for somebody more interesting who might come in. I think with practice, we become able to bring our attention to whoever is in front of us, really to let them live, to let ourselves live. That sudden shift from wanting them to get on with it, wanting them to wrap it up so we can move on to whatever might be next, to just really, really listening. Even when someone's boring, it can be interesting. It's a human being. It can talk. When my son was sick, we had to take him to Boston, to Children's Hospital, for an operation, a pretty serious operation on his hip. And the doctor there was one of 5 that our doctor here in Rochester thought might be able to handle the situation. He was actually the second one we had gone to. The first one was so arrogant and cold that we came back and said, who else you got? And he said, I said to him, if it was your child, where would you go? And he said, "Oh, I would go to Dr. Hall." It's a good question to ask people. What would you do if you were in this situation? And sometimes they'll tell you. So Dr. Hall was a big deal, and he moved through the hospital quite quickly, sort of followed by a train of 5 or 6 interns. And when you talked to him, he was just completely there. Absolutely took in everything you said. There was no sense that he was in a hurry to move on to the next person, even though his caseload was no doubt really, really heavy. But then when we'd asked all our questions, he just moved on. There was no hesitation at all. He just immediately went on. And I just felt I'd been in the presence of a practitioner, a bodhisattva. Just completely living his life. Sometimes it's easier to do when you're doing so-called important work, but it's something the important thing is that you do that you live it. More so than what you necessarily do. There's a shift when you just settle into what's there, into your life, into this moment, into this task. No longer looking beyond. I had a moment like that not that long after I had stopped drinking and been introduced to AA and was sort of in that so-called pink cloud that happens when people make that radical change. I was raking my leaves out in front of my house, and normally I would be trying to get it done. There's a lot of leaves, and instead I was just raking. It was the most wonderful thing. I knew I was hitting on something that was really important, something was really wonderful. I could say in hindsight, it was the result of the best blackout drunk I ever had. Joko says, not only do we hope, but we really give our life to this hope. So these vain thoughts and fantasies. And when they don't produce for us, we're anxious, even desperate. Impatient. Just off. Meh. Because we're too wrapped up in where we want to get. Too judgmental about how we're doing. We have our preferences. I want everything to go well. I want to be outstanding. I don't want to look bad. So things had better change. Then we try to change them. What we want is inviting us in, right in front of us. She says, one of my students recently told me a good story. It's about a man who was sitting on his roof because a tidal wave was sweeping through his village. The water was well up to the roof when along came a rescue team in a rowboat. They tried hard to reach him, and finally when they did, they shouted, well, come on, get into the boat. And he said, no, God will save me. So the water rose higher and higher, and he climbed higher and higher on the roof. The water was turbulent, but still another boat managed to make its way to him, and again they begged him to get into the boat and to save himself. And again he said, no, God will save me. I'm praying. God will save me. Finally, the water was almost over him, just his head was sticking out, and along came a helicopter. It came down right over him, and they called, come on, this is your last chance, get in here. Still he said, no, God will save me. Finally, his head went underwater and he drowned. When he got to heaven, he complained to God, why didn't you try to save me? And God said, I did. I sent you 2 rowboats and a helicopter. We are sent a lot of rowboats and helicopters. She says, we spend a lot of time looking for something called the truth. And there is no such thing except in each second, each activity of our life. But our vain hope for a resting place somewhere makes us ignorant and unappreciative of what is here right now. So in Sesshin, in Zazen, what does it mean to have no hope? It means, of course, to really do Zazen, to just sit. Nothing is wrong with dreams and fantasies, just don't hold on to them. See their unreality and turn away. Turn back to what's there. Turn back to the practice. She says, now none of us wants to abandon our hope. And to be honest, none of us is going to abandon it all at once. But we can have periods when for a few minutes or a few hours, there is just what is, just this flow. And we're more in touch with the only thing we'll ever have, which is our life. Our ever-changing life. A life of ups and downs, good and bad, pain and joy. She says, if we practice like this, what reward will we get? If we really practice like this, it takes everything we have. What will we get out of it? The answer, of course, is nothing. So let's not have hope. We won't get anything. We'll get our life, of course, but we've got that already. Well, we kind of have it. So let's not be like my friend, failing to appreciate our life and our practice. This life is nirvana. Where did we think it was? And remember that old Tenzo. If we practice the way he spread seaweed, I think it was mushrooms, actually, Joko. Anyway, maybe he was doing both. If we practice the way he spread seaweed, then we can be rewarded with this nothing at all. Elsewhere, Dogen said, if you're unable to find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it? You could say that what we're hoping for is already here. As practice goes along, as a sesshin goes along, we dip into this little bit more and more. Come clear about where it is. Begin to realize, maybe it's mostly intellectual at first, but it's also a feel for it, that we have everything we need. Our practice can have this basis of basically contentment. I don't need to change. I just need to be who I am, and then I will change. And the best thing about that change is it not something that we're engineering. So we become some picture of a good person or a good student. Not trying to play the part of a compassionate person. Can actually have compassion and love well up unbidden. The words of C.S. Lewis, English writer, can be surprised by joy. It's right there, this wellspring of everything we want, everything we've been hoping for, except it's not the way we hoped, because it's going to be full of trouble and irritations and pain. But it's absolute. It's the Dharma. we have a bit of time still. I'm going to read a little bit from another section that's entitled Practicing This Very Moment. And I just want to read this story that she tells about herself. She says, "Many years ago, I was a piano major at Oberlin Conservatory. I was a very good student, not outstanding, but very good, and I very much wanted to study with one teacher who was undoubtedly the best. He'd take ordinary students and turn them into fabulous pianists. When I finally got my chance to study with, I got my chance to study with the teacher. When I went in for my lesson, I found that he taught with 2 pianos. He didn't even say hello. He just sat down at his piano and played 5 notes. And then he said, 'You do it.' I was supposed to play it just the way he played it. I played it, and he said no. He played it again, and I played it again, and again he said no. Well, we had an hour of that, and each time he said no." Sound familiar? "In the next 3 months, I played about 3 measures, perhaps half a minute of music. Now, I had thought I was pretty good. I'd played soloist with little symphony orchestras, yet we did this for 3 months, and I cried most of those 3 months. He had all the marks of a real teacher, that tremendous drive and determination to make the students see. That's why he was so good. And at the end of 3 months, one day he said, 'Good.' What had happened? Finally, I had learned to listen. And as he said, if you can hear it, you can play it." What had happened in those 3 months? I had the same set of ears I started with. Nothing had happened to my ears. What I was playing was not technically difficult. What had happened was that I had learned to listen for the first time. I'd been playing the piano for many years. I'd learned to pay attention. That was why he was such a great teacher. He taught his students to pay attention. After working with him, they really heard. They really listened. If you can hear it, you can play it. And finished, beautiful pianists would finally come out of his studio. It's that kind of attention which is necessary in our Zen practice. We call it samadhi, this total oneness with the object. But in my story, that attention was relatively easy. It was with an object that I liked. This is the oneness of any great art, of any athlete. Anyone like that who's learned to pay attention. It's that kind of samadhi. Now that's one kind and it's valuable, but what we have to do in Zen practice is much harder. We have to pay attention to this very moment, the totality of what is happening right now. And the reason we don't want to pay attention is because it's not always pleasant. It doesn't suit us. Later on, she says, the crux of Zazen is this. All we must do is constantly create a little shift from the spinning world we've got in our heads to right here now. That's our practice. The intensity and ability to be right here now is what we have to develop. We have to be able to develop the ability to say, no, I won't spin off up here, or make that choice. Moment by moment, our practice is always a choice, a fork in the road. We can go this way, we can go that way. choice moment by moment between our nice world that we want to set up in our heads and what really is. And what really is at a Zen sesshin is often fatigue, boredom, and pain in our legs. What we learn from having to sit quietly with that discomfort is so valuable that if it didn't exist, it should. When you're in pain, you can't spin off. You have to stay with it. There's no place to go. So that pain is really valuable. Pain, boredom, antsiness, a lot of conditions that we don't like. But when you turn to it, when you meet it, when you lose yourself in it, then it's different. Then it's full and complete. Then it turns out to be what you wanted. Didn't know. Just committing ourselves to taking that step into what's here. Don't wait for the helicopter. Okay, our time is up. Stop now and recite the 4 vows.